Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, in this episode I show you some tips and tricks on shooting sunsets at the beach. Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, and welcome to my photography, Lightroom and Photoshop tips. My name is Serge Ramelli. I am a French photographer living in Paris and I do 2 tutorials per week. If you want to get them for free every week on YouTube, all you have to do is click here to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you want to get the raw files of what we're going to be doing in all of the past episodes, click here to subscribe to my newsletter. You will get 2 newsletters from me every week, and along you will get a link with all the raw files of this episode and all of the past episodes. All right, in last episode I showed you how I shoot a tree around here, a very nice Florida tree, and how I found the right composition about it. It's pretty tricky to really get some landscape photography to look right. I hope you learned something and you like it. That's the final result. This week we are going to go to Clearwater Beach, one of the most famous beaches in Florida, pretty close to my friend Scott Calby, and I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks on shooting nice photos at sunset at the beach. So let me show you what I did and let me show you all the retouching here. Just a little note before we start the tutorial. Is just to inform you that my spring promotion is extended till March 31. A lot of people wrote me that it was too short for March 21, so I'm extending it to March 31. So you get 40% on everything on my shop. It's a good opportunity for you to get any of the tutorials that I have. It helps support to do all the free stuff that I give you. Thank you very much, and let's go to the tutorial. Okay, so this is a few tips and tricks on shooting at the beach and also shooting sunsets. I see a lot of sunset photos that people send me, and I find sometimes that they make a bit of a mistake on the white balance, and they don't get as much emotion as they could out of the sunset. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and I also want to talk to you about composition. So I was by my friend Scott Calby the other day, and then I went to Clearwater Beach, which I always do, which is the closest beach next to Scott, and a really nice beach. And I was walking with my Sony A7R. I had my tripod, but first I was playing around with it. The first thing that I do is I go by the sea, and let me show you something. I put my camera at 1/80th of a second at 7.1 ISO 100. And why 180? Because I can shoot, and I have a very sharp photo, no blurry due to the movement, because 180 is fast. 7.1 gives me a good exposure, and ISO 100 gives me a very cool image. And of course, it's it's a pretty dark setting, but it works well. It worked well with this, because there was not much light because the sun was coming down. So you can just walk around, and once you're in manual, every sunset is going to be different, but once you find it, a sunset is usually pretty easy to take without a tripod because the sun is there, and so there is a lot of light. So first, here I am shooting this, and then a lot of people was coming through the water to take photos or to look at the sunset. And so I started taking pictures of, like that's a father and his kid, watching the sunset. So I took a couple of shots with them. I like it because it gives like little silhouette, which can be fine. Here's another one, like 4 guys were standing there looking at the sunset. And this is completely unretouched, I could make it a lot more dramatic, but this can make interesting photos. And this was shot by hand. That's a photographer taking a photo. That's always interesting. And then I was coming to the Clearwater Pier, and I showed this in a past episode, but I was trying to get the best perspective with that. So now I wanted to have longer exposure, so I couldn't shoot at 180, so I started putting out my tripod. I looked at this way, this composition, and it was not so good because the sunset was really on the left and this was really on the right. This was really dark. So I moved a little bit, and then I went under the pier. I tried to do long exposure under the pier, like very long exposure. I mean, not very long. That's what, 5 seconds at f22. I didn't have any ND filter on. Then I tried even longer exposure. Then I went the other way. And the other way, I'm not exactly yet at the other way. So I'm starting to do some long exposure now. I'm at 1/1 of a second at f22 because I had no ND filter on. All I had was a Sony A7R with a 35mm. So I put on my tripod. I put the ISO at ISO 50, which was the lowest that I could. I went on to f22, so very low ISO, close shutter, and then I put like a second, almost a second of exposure just to get a bit silky water. I tried that on this side. It was kind of cool. I tried much longer, like 6 seconds. I was too bright. And then I moved the other side of the pier. And I love that because on the other side of the pier, the sunset was behind the pier house that's there. I don't know how you call that. Okay, and then I took this shot that I really like because now the problem is I was with a 35 millimeter. So on this shot, I have a bit of the foreground and I have a bit of the clouds. And then I went on this shot where I took a lot more of the foreground. And then I went on this shot, which I really liked because the sun was, the sky was changing. So I'm always trying to figure out, what's going to be nicer. I wanted to get a bit, the imperfection here and of the water and the reflection, and I wanted to get some of the sky. So this is a very centered composition. There again, this is with a lot more reflection in the background, but less sky. And then this is a lot of sky and a little bit of reflection. So anyways, what I usually do is I retouch one, and then because they were all shot with the same speed, 3.2 seconds at f22. And because I don't want to do a too long of exposure. I was just trying to get the water to be a little bit silky. But check this out, and that's the amazing thing with the Sony A7R. I want to show you the quantity. This is something I usually would do in HDR, but this camera can see everything from the dark to the very bright photo. And if you've got a good exposure, you can really get the best out of a RAW file. Check this out. If I start to open the shadows, look at this. I can see the house completely, and it's not even noisy, And then if I bring down the highlights, already I can see, all the details in the sun and all the gradient in the sun. So I love that a lot. The thing is, the white balance is going to be very key on this one. But first, let's do the white point. So Alt and bringing the white points to the right, and blacks and bringing until you can see something. You can see, if you go to my website and you find my latest course called Photoshop for Photographer, I do this in Camera Raw and I go a lot over this type of retouching. So if you want to get more information, more in-depth of more complex project, you can check that out. But for now, I like this. Okay, now the right white balance, and that's very important. Now, I know that there's a formula I've been using for a long time, which is to go to shade and then to add a bit of magenta. That's what I've been doing for a long time, and it's pretty cool. The one thing I don't like about this white balance is that everything is warm, okay? And that's not very cool because it only has one type of color. So what I do now is I try to go to daylight, okay? And I'm actually even gonna go even more blue than that, okay? And then I'm gonna even take out some magenta. I'm gonna do the opposite on this one. I'm gonna add just a little bit of magenta, something like that. Because this way I get a mixture between the blue and I get a mixture between the, and the warm. So you've got warm and blue, and that's kind of cool. That is kind of cool. One thing you can do, and this only works if you have a RAW file, is you can go to the camera calibration and try a camera landscape. Sometimes it does miracle. On this one, it did a pretty good job, but I think it's still a bit too much magenta, so I'm gonna take a little bit out of it. But I kind of like that. It's pretty saturated. I'm gonna boost a little bit the exposure so we can see everything. Okay, then now on the clarity, instead of going to the right, I'm going to go to the left. Why? Because I like the fuzzy feeling in the sky and in the water. So I'm going to go minus clarity on this. I might add a bit of clarity here, just to get more details on the reflection. Now you can see I shot this at f22, and we shoot at f22, any spot is going to be visible, sensor spot. So let's take care of that using this tool, and boom, I'm just going to take this out and this out. Okay, maybe clean up a little bit. Yeah, there was some little stone here. Make this a little more clean. Okay. And now, I think I'm gonna now I'm gonna take a brush and I'm gonna just put a little bit more exposure. So press the Alt key and reset everything. And I just wanna, add a little bit of exposure. Let me check my flow and density. I'm gonna put around 80 on this one, okay? And I'm just going to add a little bit of light on the exposure. Now it's way too much, so I'm going to turn it down. I just want to increase, a little bit the reflection that was there. Make it a bit more visible. Okay, click new brush, and let me add this also, a little bit of white here. Now that's way too much, so I'm going to bring it down. There was sort of a little wave there. I like that. Okay, and then new brush. Every brush stroke is a new brush. Just a little bit of white here. Back it down a little bit. That's a bit too much. Okay. All right, and there's some, I don't like so much the color. I think I'm going to go back to the Adobe standard, which is going to take a lot of saturation out, and I'm going to just add some vibrance. I think it's going to give a different feeling to it, but I think, yeah, it's going to make it more yellow and orange. I think it was too much into the blues. Okay, now I want to make this a little bit more panoramic, so I'm going to take the crop tool, use the angle to make sure that my horizontal line is perfectly right. Okay, and then I'm just going to maybe move this in a little bit, just a little bit, and move this in a little bit, so that we are a little bit more, it's on the photo. Okay, and I think there's another spot here, I can see that, and another one here. Okay, I'm not going to bother you with sensor spot, you get the concept. And I think I'm going to add a little bit more saturation. It was a crazy sunset, believe me. One of the nicest I've ever seen. I've come to this beach many times, and God knows there is a lot of nice, Florida sunset, very often. But for some reason I was cursed. I had the Parisian curse. Every time I came, I lost the sunset. And on this one, it's kind of cool. I kind of like it. I'm just thinking, what else I could do. Maybe I could close the photo, but I think I'm just going to add on this one. I'm going to add just a little post-crop vignetting. Oops, not that much. I think on this one it's going to work. It's going to be cool. And yeah, and remember I went minus clarity. I didn't do a plus clarity on this one. So it's a bit fuzzy, but I like that. Okay, and let's zoom in and see if there is any noise. There's hardly any noise. This Sony A7R is crazy. It is a crazy camera. Okay, so I'm just gonna anyway put like maybe just 10 of noise, and then I have this formula where I take 100, and it's just a basic sharpening. I'm not saying this is the end of the world sharpening. This is a basic sharpening. And let's look at the sky. Is the sky grainy? It's not even grainy. Oh my God, I don't believe this camera. Okay, and I'm gonna go for remove chromatic aberration in case there is any, but this camera hardly does any chromatic aberration. And you can actually download this photo for free. And this photo won one of the first place on 500px 3 days ago. So believe me, it was popular. It reached, I think, a 9.99 or 9. It was like on the first page of 500px. And so I thought that it was so many people saw it and liked it that I should do a tutorial about it. Honestly, the key thing on this photo was to be there at the right time and get that right sunset. Alright guys, I just wanted to show you these little tips and tricks on sunsets, and especially the whole thing about the color contrast between the warm colors and the cold colors. I think it just makes the sunset pop even more. Okay, I want to show you, for those who haven't seen it yet, a little presentation of my new course, which is the longest one I've ever did and my biggest course this year's Photoshop for Photographer. Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, I'm happy to announce that I have a new course coming up. It is called Photoshop for Photographer. It's my longest course so far, over 5 hours long, and the whole purpose is to really give you all the tools you need with Photoshop for retouching your photos from a photographer viewpoint. Photoshop is a huge software and there's a lot of things you can do with it. We're going to look at it from a photographer viewpoint. The first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to use Camera Raw, and we're going to retouch several projects. You can see some of the before and afters here coming on screen. And I'm going to show you a simple example at first, and then we're going to go into more and more complex raw file editing until you really get the raw file looking like you want. Next, we're going to go into layer, mask, and blending modes. To do that, I'm going to show you how to replace some skies so you really master the different types of blending modes and the different types of masking options that we have, and how the layers really work with Photoshop. That is very important for you to understand. Then we are going to do some digital blending. Now, digital blending is an amazing technique for when you shoot the sky and when you shoot your foreground, and to mix them up to get all the dynamic range and a very natural result. Then we're going to jump into HDR. And on HDR, we're going to check the different techniques available today. We're going to do HDR using Photoshop, and then we're going to do HDR using 32-bit files and tone mapping in Camera Raw, which is one of my preferred way today because it gives a lot more natural result. Then I'm going to show you how to make a very HDR illustrative look with one single file. Next, we're going to go into black and white. And I'm going to show you two techniques to do black and white. One completely in Camera Raw and the other one in Photoshop for very dramatic results. Then we're going to jump into removing elements, and I'll show you the different tools that Photoshop has to take out and remove unwanted elements in your photo. That happens a lot when we take photography. Next, we're going to jump into panoramas, and I'm going to show you my whole workflow on doing panoramas. Next, I'm going to show you all kinds of small special effects from simulating a very nice bokeh on a photo, from doing tilt shift photography, trying to mimic an 85mm 1.4 lens to have a very small depth of field, how to explode details in a photo, all kinds of small tricks I've gathered over the years to give your photo an extra look. And last, we're going to put everything into practice to create one composite using all the things we have learned so far, and that will be the final tutorial. So I hope you do check it out. It's really all I know that I've put into one big tutorial on Photoshop. Photoshop for photographer. I hope you do check it out. Alright guys, I hope you like this tutorial. We had an amazing sunset here in Clearwater, and I hope you do get some real sunset because it's a blast shooting in these conditions. And I will see you in my next episode. Mesdames et messieurs, au revoir.